I don't want to play football. I don't understand.
All right, hit that horn, babe. Let's dance.
Hi, I'm Brady,
And I'm Josh.
and we could have been doctors, but instead we're sadly here doing a podcast about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I had a passion fruit, but I do know that Ben Roethlisberger has 66.9% completion rating this season. Nice.
Can't remember the last time I shook someone's hand, but I could tell you that despite the fact that the Steelers only allowed 289 points last year, we still had a point differential of negative 14.
You hate to see it.
I did hate to see it. We were the best. Somehow we were the best 8-8 team last year, but we're the worst 11-1 team ever this year.
Yeah, because
Make that make sense, Josh.
it makes sense by one simple fact of life: people hate when people do good. So we were 11-0. You love to hate the winner. You love to hate who's in first because you don't have it. Talking to you, Bengals and Browns fans.
Well, it's funny you say that because if there's any people that hate the Steelers right now, it's us probably, and how they're playing in some factions of the Steelers right now. And we'll get into that. Speaking of that, we've had 2 weeks kind of dictated by COVID restrictions, and the schedule has been all wonky. So for that reason, we're kind of just going to jump the whole NFL picture and jump right into our Steelers that had 2 games since our last podcast. But before we do that, I'll cover quickly what the playoff picture looks like across the NFL.
We're calling this podcast the Yins Down podcast because we don't care about anyone else.
You know what? And if we like it, we might stick that way. We'll see. Because contrary to what you guys might think, I actually don't like talking about the Los Angeles Rams. I don't care for them. That being said, the playoff picture in the NFC is shaping out to be New Orleans, number 1 seed. They're a game ahead of the Green Bay Packers. And 3, it's the Rams. 4, the Giants, who are actually looking pretty confident at this point. They're on a 4-game win streak, something to that effect. The Seahawks are in that first wild card, Tampa Bay the second wild card, and the Minnesota Vikings are actually in that 7th slot at the end of the NFC. Josh, I don't know if you can recall, but the Minnesota Vikings, they got off to a really bad start, and that's surprising to see them ahead of teams like the Cardinals and Bears, who got a strong start this season, and even ahead of the 49ers, who are the defending NFC pennant champions.
It helps when you have primetime Kirk Cousins on your team, not playing in primetime, because that's just Dub City, baby.
It's weird. Number 1 seed is not the Washington football team. That's
weird because I'm pretty sure they just won the Super Bowl this past weekend.
We'll hold our reins just for a second. Even with a loss to the Washington football team, the Pittsburgh Steelers are still your number 1 seed. It's because the conference difference. The Chiefs have lost the game to the Raiders. We've lost the game to the Washington football team. That's NFC versus AFC. So there you go. You have your Chiefs, number 2. You have your Bills, who we're going to play next week, number 3. 4, the Tennessee Titans, who we dominated. The Cleveland Browns in the 5th seed, who we dominated. The Miami Dolphins in the 6th seed. And then we have the Colts in the 7th seed, still looking strong. They play the Raiders next week. I know that. And that will be really important for shaping out that AFC wildcard seeding. So watch that game is going to be a really good game to watch to see who wins between the Raiders and the Colts. And then you have the Ravens and Patriots right on the outside of that bubble with a realistic chance of getting in to the playoffs. Now, last thing that we want to do when we were taking a look at the playoff picture is we'll just kind of look what the Steelers are looking for what we need in order to get into the playoffs from this point. Because, Josh, it's not that much. I know that in order to get in, it's very simple. The Steelers need to win against Buffalo, and then the Browns need to lose. against the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Now, I don't know which odds I like better, but I know that both of those, at least to me, those determinations of those games are pretty 50-50. So if there's a 50-50 chance, then, well, if they're both 50-50, there's a quarter 75% chance that we are in the playoffs by the end of this week.
Quick math lesson for y'all.
I know, man.
We're an educational podcast.
Have political science degrees going on. I told you, Dad. I told you, work out.
Look at me now.
Those other majors and minors that included math directly, let's not mention them. All right, so Josh, with that being said, let's talk about these last 2 weeks. I think the themes, despite one being a win and one being a loss, they're going to be quite similar. But what are some of your initial thoughts?
So something that I found rather startling, shocking, interesting, whatever you want it to be. Even though we won,
adjectives there, bud.
A lot of adjectives. We're in a descriptive mood. Even though
pontificate, won't you?
Yeah. All right. Calm down, SAT. All right. Ravens game, good, bad. Washington game, good, bad. We had a little bit of both from all of them. Fun fact, to me, in my head, it kind of seems like they all ran together. From the Ravens game, we could not run the ball. Couldn't run the ball at all. The defense at least looked decent there. We were able to stop plays on crucial downs, and then we also gave up a decent amount of gash plays up the middle to Lamar Jackson. But after watching the Ravens run against the Eagles last night, it wasn't really, it is what it is. You're going to lose some to Lamar Jackson. He's the reigning MVP for a reason. Drop passes started against the Ravens, and this seems to be a running theme that ran all the way into Washington and ran us to an L. Lots of drop passes. Ebron didn't look so hot. Got a lot of Lions fans chirping on Twitter saying, this is what you guys get for getting them. But, can't live with him, can't live without him. TJ Watt is good, in short. The man is amazing. Defensive MVP right there, watching it unfold in front of our eyes. He was good against the Ravens. He was good against the Washington football team up until he had one massive mental error that gave them a touchdown. We can talk on that later. Lack of red zone scoring in the Ravens game. That also carried forward into the Washington game. It seems to me that we were able to squeak out a win against the Ravens while performing with the same errors that we had against the Washington football team. Just turns out that lackluster performance was not enough to get us done in Washington or with Washington. Again, Washington dropped a lot of passes. Injuries are adding up. We got a lot of guys on the injury list. I'll throw it up on screen here. Look at that. Thing's long. It's a big old injury list. Ben looked a little slow in the Washington game. That time to get the ball out was not as fast as before. He's originally like 2.7, 2.9, something like that, fastest in the league. Against Washington, he was having to do some rollouts, spinning off Chase Young, trying to get that ball down there and not really making any completions. TJ, still good. I mean, you can't fault the guy. And then Juju kind of disappeared on us against Washington. Claypool as well. It kind of seemed like when we needed our biggest stars to step up against Washington, no one was there. So lack of red zone. If you are an NFL team and you cannot punch the ball in on the 1 yard line, 4 possessions in a row, 4 plays in a row, you probably should go play Coastal Carolina or something.
An important function, you might disagree with me here. I think an important function of a receiver / tight end is to catch the ball. actually receive.
There were too many times where Ebron's wide open across the middle of the field. Ball hit his hands, and he drops it, and he just claps his hands together, and he's like, man, my bad. It's like, no, dog, get out of there. Put someone in there who's going to catch the ball. If it is 3rd and 8 and you catch the ball 1 yard past the first down line and then you drop it, I'm not throwing to you again. Like, I know we have another tight end on the team. We have McDonald. I have no idea why he's not getting the ball thrown to him. I understand 100% that he's not a great route runner as Ebron. He may not be as fast as Ebron, not as physical. Actually, McDonald's 100% more physical than Ebron. He's just a bigger tight end, but Ebron's got that faster wide receiver like quickness and speed. But if you can't catch the ball, there's no point being out there because you're sure not blocking for our run game because it's non-existent.
Here's a really interesting thing about our receivers because, we've talked about it all the time. There's so much praise to be given there, and then obviously these last 2 weeks, I feel maybe it's the way Ben's throwing it. I really can't tell, but here's a cool thing about Juju. He has been targeted in the top 20 in the league. He's actually been targeted 94 times, but he has the fourth of those targets. He's the fourth shortest target distance, which is about 5.5 yards. Of the 4 players, right, him and 3 players that are targeted shorter, he has 600 more receiving yards than second place. 600 yards, which is more than second place. So he's getting all these short targets, but he's amassing, massive yak, and that's the whole point. I think Ben is throwing these balls where they're never on the receiver. He throws them in a position where they can go get yards after the catch. And obviously they're huge drive stoppers, because if you don't catch the ball, you don't have a chance to run with it, obviously.
And this kind of is a little bit of a microcosm kind of the way our offense is right now. So Ben will be doing these small little dump off passes, 1-2 yard completions to these guys, because we don't have a run game to pick up these small yards. And it's up to the receivers to turn it into yards after the catch. And Juju is honestly the most physical receiver on the team that we have. Claypool's awesome. He's got a lot of straight line speed. He's down the sideline, but in those small, tough yardage situations, like, Juju's going to be the guy who's going to get it done. It just so happens that it doesn't feel like Ben's getting him the ball for him to even showcase his skills to get it done. Like, there's been some splash plays where it's like, Juju got it, and he just muscles past 3 dudes, gets us a first down. There's also plays where you hit Deontay on a curl route, and he just freaking swats it out of the air with his hands because, I don't know, he thought it was a bug or something.
Yeah, I mean, at least in Juju's defense, he only has 2 drops over the last 2 weeks. Only 2 drops. I mean, he's a receiver. He should be catching everything that, feasibly hits him in the hands. But he only has 2 of the drops. But Deontay and Eric Ebron, they account for 10 of the drops of the last 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, 40% of Roethlisberger's incompletions have been due to drops. So 14 drop passes over the last 2 weeks. And Josh, I believe you said, or we've talked about it, it's 32 drops in general on the year.
We actually, sorry, I don't mean to correct you, but we actually have 34 drops on the year.
Oh, geez.
With the next closest being the Super Bowl champion Eagles with 31.
So
at some point Super Bowl champion Cowboys with 29.
So if we do some quick math right there real quick, over the last 2 weeks, obviously 14. That means from our first 10 games, we only had 20 drops. So we were averaging about 2 drops a game. That sounds normal. If you ask me, are we worried? Are we not worried? I'd say we're not worried. I think we had 2 weird weeks, and we'll get back to, 2 drops a game is pretty reasonable, I'd say. And they're probably both going to be Ebron.
Small tangent time. Going to get on my soapbox. I think the leading cause for our drops is the boys.
Randy?
No, I'm not going to talk about Randy yet because this is more of a joking soapbox than an actual legitimate soapbox. The boys forgot to pack the hand warmers. They're out there trying to catch these balls with ice cubes on their fingertips. They can't feel it. They got to pack the hand warmers. If we can get a donation supply, those rubbing together hand warmers, and get them out to the boys, I guarantee our drops go from 6 a game back down to 2, and they're all Ebron.
These guys don't know yet that Ben plays best in November, December when it gets cold.
When he's slinging the rock in there like a Cy Young winner.
We should know better to yell when talking about Ben Roethlisberger. Usually yelling against Ben Roethlisberger is not positive. But let's talk about, maybe flip it. I think not flip it, but necessarily we talk about one aspect I think is an interesting thing. Sacks, both ways, for us and for against us. So we haven't allowed a sack in 5 games, which is incredible. Ben is obviously throwing it very quick. But on the flip side, I think it's been 69 straight games where the Steelers have a sack, which is,
nice.
I think both of those are actually close to records respectively. I know for sacks allowed, we have the third longest streak, or we're tied with the third longest streak. We only need to go another, I believe, 14 more games in order to shore up that record.
I like our odds.
So that's great. And then obviously this consecutive sacks, it's also hard to believe with the years that we've had, Ferrier and Harrison, Hampton, Palmalu, all these guys that were able to get to the quarterback, that this is the longest streak that we're on. Think about this. This is true. This streak, Josh, is so long that Jarvis Jones is a part of this streak, continuing the streak, and he sucked.
And I had to Google his name.
He is a player that existed. I could promise you that.
This Steelers team is a historic team that has one loss to a team that is honestly a little bit underrated. It's okay. We're going to be fine. Everyone take a deep breath together on 3. 1, 2, 3. And let it out.
It's so funny that this is who you're being given your attitude on the day of the game.
Anyone who follows us on Twitter at Nanyans Podcast will know that I've had the Twitter account for the last 2 games, so it's been a roller coaster of emotions as I like to watch Steelers football.
It's kind of like when you have a train coming right at you. You're not really going to be all that objective. That's what the Twitter is like in Josh's hands. It's very reactionary.
It is. So, can I rattle off some 2020 NFL stats about the Steelers for us?
Oh, Josh, I'd love that if you did. Don't you think that would be relevant to this Steelers podcast?
I feel like it would be relevant to this podcast. All right, here we go. We got a couple of them.
Contribute.
Yeah, I brought my big boy pants today. So passes completed, NFL leader, Ben Roethlisberger, 324. Pass attempts, NFL leader, Ben Roethlisberger, 484.
Good.
Longest pass, Ben Roethlisberger, 84 yards. Passes completed per game, Ben Roethlisberger, 27. Lowest sack percentage, Ben Roethlisberger, 2.02%. Longest reception, 2020, Chase Claypool, 84 yards. See how that kind of adds up, longest pass, longest reception? It's funny how that works. Most tackles for loss, TJ Watt, 19. Most sacks, TJ Watt, 12. I mean, historic when you look at the numbers.
Wait, biggest love handles on a quarterback. Is that also Ben?
Let me check. It is.
I'd like to grab on those and ride those into the playoffs.
Can we talk about us? I know I just rattled off some stats about Ben and, how, as you have previously mentioned just now, he's an absolute physical specimen, 6'5", 240, man's a hoss. Could you explain to me how when we're on the 1 yard line, we don't have a play for the 6'5", 240-pound quarterback to do a QB sneak to get us a yard, half a yard?
He's what? Is he 34, 36? How old is he? He's 30.
He's 38. So,
I don't know. There has to be some worry there. You never know. Matthew Stafford hurt his, hand on a dive earlier this year. Ben is not the same quarterback he used to be, even though it was kind of fun to see him scramble around like before.
So what you're saying is Drew Brees breaking 11 of his ribs stopped us from calling a QB sneak on the 1 yard line to get a touchdown against the Washington football team?
Drew Brees has Taysom Hill / Jameis Winston behind him. We have Mason Rudolph and Josh
Duck Hodges. Quack, 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 quack.
Okay, whatever. Okay.
Josh Dobbs doesn't actually count because he's never suited up. That guy just sits on the sideline. So not technically a real backup as of right now. All right. I'm actually a little bit enamored with Ben. So as many football fans do, I like to listen to the mic'd up segments that NFL puts out. Can't play any of that here for us because copyright strike, even though we make no money off of this. But Big Ben and Mike Tomlin in the most recent mic'd up from the Washington game, they were just kind of out there palling around, having a good time. Ben was making jokes. He was like, in a groove, having a good time, and he was just out there playing football. And it was really nice to hear. And even against the adversity, he was still this like nice, calm leader. We were down by, I think at the time it was 6. It might have been when we were still down 3. I don't know. They didn't actually have the score on when they played the audio clip. But he's like, hey guys, let's get a first down, and then we'll just put a drive together and work from there. And I know that at that exact same time, I probably fired off a tweet with a picture of Butter and the picture of one of the Steelers wide receivers next to it, like absolutely losing my mind. But Ben was there, calm, firing that thing.
This is true. This goes for both the last 2 weeks. And I'm pretty sure this could sum up the entire podcast. What we're getting here is that it's been said that this team is lucky. I just think that this team is efficient. And you can't beat efficiency, but just over these last 2 weeks, we've only converted 41% of our third downs. We've converted 0 for 4 on a fourth down. We're only scoring a touchdown in 28% of our red zone drives. And then we have a turnover differential of -1. We used to, that was our bread and butter, was our turnover differential. And now it's negative. It was -1 over the last. I would say these last 2 weeks are not a categorization of, it doesn't really show what we're going to do for the rest of the season. I think that these 2 weeks were a soft reset for us.
All right, Brady, I want to talk about our rushing game, at least since week 5, because that's when we had our bye week, and it seems to be the start of all of our troubles.
Josh, I'd be insulted if you didn't.
Well, I'd be insulted if you interrupt me one more time. Starting with week 5, 136 rush yards. Week 6, 129 rushing yards. Week 7, 94. Week 8, 48. Week 9, 46. Week 10, 44. Week 11, 106. Week 12, 68. Week 13, 21.
Again, I'm going to point to it from last week. We throw passes that are essentially runs, and we just, when you drop the ball, that's why it's been so detrimental. When you drop the ball, it eliminates that facet of the game. And that's probably the worry of a lot of fans, is that, if those drops happen, which they have been happening, it can be detrimental. It is true. I would just say on most days, it'll be fine.
You want to know a pretty fun stat about that Washington football loss that we had? That was one of our highest passing. That was our highest passing game since the win against Cincinnati. We had more passing yards than we did against Jacksonville. We had more passing yards than we did against Baltimore. We actually.
You mean to tell me in games where we are losing, we throw more?
I mean to tell you that in games that don't have a decent, at least some semblance of a run game to back it up, we are throwing more, because in some of those games where we threw a little bit less, we did make up for it with run yards, bringing our total yardage up higher than against the Washington football team. So it kind of does go into that whole, you need a run game to have a pass game to keep the defense honest. And without a run game, every defense can cheat up on the Steelers because they know it's a pass coming. Even when we have Derek Watt and Benny Snell in there, it's a pass somehow.
Well, as we use all that and looking forward to our next week against Buffalo, which will certainly be a formidable,
biggest test yet, biggest challenge yet, honestly.
Yeah, what's important to note is that our point differential is still very high. The points we score minus the points we allow. In fact, it's at 123 when the Steelers won the Super Bowl with Tomlin the first year that they had him. The point differential was 124. So it's pretty close. I think we need to find a way to mirror what we did that year. So it starts with a very good showing in Buffalo. I believe it's Sunday Night Football too. So it'll be a good game to watch in prime time.
It definitely will. The Buffalo Bills are a well-balanced team. Every game they consistently have and a formidable passing attack compounded with a run game that it's there. Like, you have to fear the run game. You have to be wary of it. And you also have to be aware that Josh Allen is a mobile quarterback.
I could say that. Yeah, exactly. Their run game is based around Josh Allen.
The run game is based around Josh Allen, and it's a different style of run game than the run game based around Lamar, which is a little bit more speed, a little bit more quickness. With the Josh Allen run game is a lot of, I'm going to run you over even if you're a linebacker, which, speaking of linebackers, we don't have any. So that will be fun.
Yeah, that Williamson, that trade actually seemed to be a smart trade. You know, he doesn't seem like just another body. So hopefully we can get that going. And next time we do this podcast, we won't have to be as depressed as we were doing this one. Josh has been crying the entire time, by the way.
Yeah, I've gone through an entire 2.5 boxes of Kleenex.
Wait, I was talking about crying, bro.
Oops.
But with that being said, I'm Brady.
And I'm Josh.
And we could have been doctors, but instead we decided to do this podcast for now.